Hello and welcome back to the Punchers Chance podcast, and welcome to the review show where we have a look back at last weekend's boxing. Of course, Dalton Smith beating Subriel Matias in pretty emphatic fashion and Agit Kabayel winning as well. Now I'm going to jump straight over to you, Ben, partly because Harry's not here and also because you got this one wrong a little bit, didn't you, with Dalton Smith?
Oh, I got this fight very wrong, to be fair. I was getting cooked in those TikTok comments, but you know, I'm a big enough man, clearly, to sit here and admit I was wrong. I didn't think Dalton Smith could... Well, it's not that I didn't think he could stand and trade. I just didn't think it was a very good idea, because that's basically playing into Matias's hands. But yeah, that Sheffield Steel really showed his full power. 5th round stoppage, another British world champion. And I'm really happy for Dalton Smith. I wanted Dalton Smith to win. I wanted Britain to have another world champion. And in terms of the performance itself, it's one of the best performances, I think, from a British fighter, especially going overseas to America to win your first world title. That is what dreams are made of, really. That it turned into the perfect night for Dalton Smith and his team. I really liked the video after the fight as well, where obviously the celebrations are happening. Eddie Hearn jumping in as well, and you're seeing how much that win meant to him as well. And like he does do a really good job of backing his fighters and promoting them well, but you could see how much that win meant to him. I think he said it was probably the best sort of away victory he's felt since he's been in the sport of boxing and promoting, but he's done a brilliant job with Dalton Smith. He's put himself in a really good position now, and I think that fight with Adam Azim, which was the one they were calling for after the fight, that's made it 10 times bigger now. Yeah,
and to jump back to the fight, if it helps, I agree with you, and I still agree with you that going toe-to-toe with Subriel Matias isn't the best idea in the world. With that said, I've in the past loads of times have said, I love it when fighters go and win fights on their terms. They don't, I think he kind of thought, I could try and be somebody else and play to Matias's strengths or weaknesses and try and beat him that way. Or I could beat him as Dalton Smith, do what I do best. And I think that's what he did. And like you say, he showed a great chin to survive some big shots, and he showed some real power, and he just dug in. And I think really the main difference probably was two things. First and foremost, that opening round where Subriel Matias threw nothing. So there's already a round's worth of damage to him that he didn't inflict on Dalton Smith before they kind of started trading. And the other one was the body work. Dalton Smith landed a couple beautiful body shots, which just kind of preps them for the finish. And then those lead hooks, the one that eventually wobbled him, and it was obviously the rights that stopped him. But yeah, it was a cracking performance. It's a shame though, and you talked about the away, and I think there's something to be said for the fact it was on Matias's quote unquote home soil. All of this, everything was kind of stacked against Dalton Smith. But it is a shame that wasn't on a DAZN, on a Matchroom show up north. I mean, it would have been great to have that as his kind of, and I think he'll get it now, whether it's at Hillsborough or Sheffield Arena or wherever. I think he'll get a big fight in the UK now, but I think it would have been pretty sweet in a different way for him to win it in Britain. But I mean, he won't get, he's a world champion. And we were just saying this before, other than Nick Ball, the only British champion that has beaten another champion to pick up their title. When you look at Fabio Wardley, interim, obviously Joseph Parker's a very respectable win. Jazza Dickens was upgraded. Lewis Crocker, Paddy Donovan, that was controversial anyway. And then it was an IBF mandatory, and Boots Ennis vacated. So in that sense, he's one of the two fighters we've got that beat an out-and-out champion to get his titles.
Yeah, you could have imagined the atmosphere if that was like up in Sheffield when he landed that shot and got a stoppage to win a world title. But I think there is something special about going to New York of all places and pulling off a performance like that. It's easy as well to the keyboard warriors in the TikTok comments to say after the fact that, oh, I knew that was going to happen. But yeah, I was wrong in terms of how the fight was going to play out. I'm really glad that Dalton Smith has won and has got a world title. And I really liked it was more of a call out from Eddie Hearn after the fight towards Adam Azim, but I don't know whether that fight is going to happen next, because I think they're going to try and push the Alberto Puello, I think is the interim champ or next in line or whatever. So I think that's what they are going to try and push, and that could be his fight in Sheffield, the first defence up there. It's another tough fight, obviously, but it'd be a really good night to go back to Sheffield and defend your world title. But I'd really like to see that Adam Azim fight now, and I'm still not totally sure how that fight plays out either, to be totally honest.
I think style-wise, it's perhaps a better fight than the Matias fight in terms of for the fans. Very different fighter to Dalton Smith. He does carry power, and he carries power late into the fight, but he does so because he's got speed, he's got accuracy, Azim this is. And then Dalton Smith obviously has shown an incredible chin, great power, and we knew he's got big power. So as a style matchup, that could be a really interesting fight to watch. I think towards the back end of 2026, if you think, give Dalton Smith, clean up a mandatory so that he can kind of earn a voluntary defense of the title, get Adam Azim a fight after, if he gets through his next one through Lemos, get him a fight that puts him a little bit better placement in terms of titles, and then do a voluntary defense of the title somewhere in Dalton Smith's hometown, whether it's Hillsborough. Obviously, that would be difficult timing-wise with the football season, or if they do it in just a big arena up there. I think that makes the most sense, sort of commercially speaking. Yeah,
that would be really good. It'd be good for British boxing as well. We were speaking the other week about how we haven't had many big main events in the UK over the last few years, because the bigger fights tend to go abroad to Saudi or wherever. But you could imagine the atmosphere that night, and that would be a packed out, wherever they do it in Sheffield would be packed out, and I think it would feel, still to me anyway, feels like a 50-50 fight, because like you said, I think Azim has got probably the speed and Dalton Smith maybe the power, so it's that perfect combination of what is going to win between the two of them. But it's one I'm really looking forward to watching.
Yeah, I'm just thinking then off the top of my head, realistically, you get the defence over the summer at Hillsborough, and then you look at it, because I mean, Sheffield Wednesday need something to cheer for first and foremost. Yeah. I'm sure they'll be welcoming of the money as well, but it just makes sense, doesn't it? We love a British sort of stadium fight. You could put a really nice card together, particularly if Dave Allen gets through his next fight, which is coming up. There's a few fighters, Josh Padley, in and around that area that you could stack out a really nice card for Matchroom. With that, Adam Azim, what do you think Team Azim are thinking after that Dalton Smith performance? Because on one hand, they'll have wanted him to win because that fight's a better fight for them with the world title on the line. But also, to win like that against someone like Matias, they got to be like, that is it shows the level to Dalton Smith that we hadn't previously seen. So what do you think they're thinking? Or do you still think they're 100% on, we're beating Dalton Smith?
Obviously, they're going to be confident. If you're not confident, there's no point taking the fight, I don't think. But it almost feels now like Dalton Smith has leapfrogged him and has taken, because he's taken that next step to world level, I think it's put a bit of added pressure on Azim and his team now, and Boxer again, because I feel like bar Lauren Price, who is, I think, the only other world champion the Boxer have, is the only world champion the Boxer have, Azim is probably their best chance of creating a major star, but he's sort of fell behind in the pecking order compared to Dalton Smith now, because I know he's still earlier in his career, he's younger as well, but he is at European level, where Dalton Smith has made that jump to world level. So it's almost, he's got and I think he's got a chance at the end of this month now, in that fight on the 31st of January, to sort of prove that he can compete to that level as well. But I think it's just going to be one of those ones where it's going to be a bit of needle back and forth between promoters, between fighters, until we eventually see the two of them square off and see who comes off best. But I think you also want to play it smart in terms of a business point of view. You want to put both fighters in the best possible position to make it as commercially viable as possible. If both of them are holding world titles, or if Dalton Smith keeps his world title and Azim is a interim champion or next in line, that makes it even bigger again then. So I think that will be the game plan from both sides, is to build the fight as big as possible, and probably back end of 2026 I see the two of them facing off then.
Yeah, I think there is almost a sense of the longer it goes on before they fight, the more exciting the fight becomes.
It depends.
Possibly, yeah. Unless
of some fights we should have seen about 15 years ago.
Yeah, maybe. But I think the other thing is, the frustrating thing for me with Adam Azim in particular is you talk about Dalton Smith, and he got British, Commonwealth, then he picked up the European, but he picked up that European that Adam Azim vacated. So in theory, Adam Azim got to that European level first and hasn't kicked on from that. Since then, Dalton Smith has gone WBC Silver and EBU defense, WBC Silver, world title fight. In the meantime, Adam Azim has fought for, I think, his IBO world title and a WBO Intercontinental. Like, he hasn't kicked on. And I don't think that's his own fault necessarily. I think he's been kept on a leash a little bit in terms of setting him free at the world stage, which I think is frustrating. But it is interesting to see how those two have been managed by promoters, and obviously we've talked about some of the issues that Boxer have, and you did a video on it that if people want to check out, I think it's almost more poignant now that Dalton Smith has picked up that title with Adam Azim. But lots of interesting stuff there. Not too much to talk about on the undercard, so we're going to jump over to Deutschland, where Agit Kabayel put on a pretty damn good performance, but no one put on a better performance than that German crowd. Oh my God.
Really good atmosphere.
The noise in there. And I heard, I think Carl Frampton said, and I don't mean this isn't a dig at Carl Frampton, but he said on commentary, like, oh, I would have presumed that German fight nights would be very respectful, kind of chill. I mean, he clearly doesn't know that they love to party, but unbelievable. Like, such a good night, it seemed. There were some good fights on there as well. But onto that main event. Did it go how we expected? I know obviously the outcome was what we expected, but, you know, was there a little bit of kind of hang about?
Well, I was going to say, talking about this, I wish I'd made the TikTok short on this fight instead, because I actually called this one pretty spot on compared to the fight in America. But yeah, when I was first watching it, Kynba, I didn't realise how big he was until I actually sat down to watch the main event. I believe
he's got the best, longest reach in boxing. In the heavyweight division, and obviously then presumably in boxing.
I was going to say, because he looked like he could still jab Kabayel sitting on his corner stool in between the rounds, but yeah, he was a big guy, and especially the first round I was watching, I was thinking, oh, Kabayel may... I thought he'd get to him eventually, but I thought it might be a bit of a struggle to get around that sort of long reach to begin with, and the jab. I think he was having a bit of difficulty within the first round especially, and I think he had a bit of a cut as well early on, so I was worrying slightly that this could be one of those nights where things just unravel. But again, with those body shots, he's just so good at them, especially the sort of left hook to the body. I think it just eventually weighs those opponents down, slows the feet down, and you could see him round by round and minute by minute sort of edging closer and closer, getting on the inside a lot more and unleash into the body. And I think it was just a matter of time then before he eventually got the stoppage. And now some people say that the stoppage was a bit premature, but I personally felt it was coming inevitably. Probably would have wanted to see a bit more in the fight, but again, in terms of what he's shown, is really impressive, and there's no doubt that he's going to cause serious issues, I think, to many top heavyweights in the division.
Yeah, I think we'll talk a little bit more about stoppages in general later on in the episode with one of the other fights. But yeah, I thought it was a weird one because, like you say, there was a moment in that first round where Kynba was catching Kabayel quite a lot. He was having quite a bit of success, particularly with the uppercut behind the jab as Kabayel was trying to get in. And obviously that cut is nasty. And I think in a weird way, that has made me more sure of Kabayel being an elite fighter. The way he was able to ride those shots, take them on. They didn't really affect him and his performance at all. And then that eventually the attack became too much. And he's so good at beating these big, powerful fighters. We've seen it with Zhang. Obviously, Zhang dropped him, but he, vaguely speaking, avoided the power and obviously stopped Zhang. Makhmudov, he made him quit. Frank Sanchez, he obliterated him. And I think what we saw was with Kabayel, it's like a snowball rolling down a hill. As the fight goes on, it gets faster and faster, and it picks up momentum. And before you know it, the fight's over. And I think it's a really good skill to have, to be able to take the damage and continue going forward. And it just becomes too much. Like, a lot of heavyweights don't have the conditioning to keep up with Kabayel for 12 rounds. No. And if he's able to stay as durable as he is, you'd struggle to stop him. And then, at that point, it's, well, can I just hold him off for long enough?
Yeah, I do genuinely think he'll cause a lot of issues to many of the heavyweights just because of the way he fights. But I know there's some calling now that he should have a shot at Usyk. I know we've said it before, but from watching that fight, I still would give the edge to Usyk. I think he would be too smart and pick him off too much in terms of it. Defensively, I think you can see some weaknesses there where he does get caught a bit too much. And I don't know whether that's necessarily a factor. Maybe he doesn't respect his opponent's punch power enough to let that, put too much of a stop to him coming forward, because his game plan is very much get on the inside, throw shots to the body, slow him down, wear him down, and eventually he'll get a stoppage. But I don't see that working. To be fair, whatever game plan you throw at Usyk, I don't ever feel like it's going to work. He seems to have a plan for every sort of fighter, but I still see that fight being a bit of a struggle for him. But in terms of any other heavyweight that they could give him, I think he would pose real problems, and it'd be interesting to see what they're going to look at as their next option now, because Usyk looks possibly like he's getting that Deontay Wilder fight anyway, so I don't know. It's hard to think of who they could actually give him next.
Yeah, I want to say on that, and I touted it a little bit in terms of in the last episode, but I'm even more so now, so frustrated with the WBC. Why is that? Are they allowing Wilder as a defence of the WBC title? He has been nowhere near that level to show that he deserves that shot for a while now. And you've got Agit Kabayel, who has shown nothing except he deserves that shot for a while now. Realistically, the right thing to do would be to strip again, say to Usyk, this is your mandatory, fight him or lose it. But we know the WBC won't do that. And it is so frustrating because I don't think Usyk would have taken that Kabayel fight. So I think you're looking at a situation where Kabayel becomes a WBC champion. And I'm not a huge fan of paper champions in that sense, but I think he's beaten enough to deserve a world title. And then now you'd be looking at, okay, well, Agit Kabayel's got a world title. Tyson Fury looks like he might not be fighting Anthony Joshua this year. Could or would it be worth Tyson Fury's while having a pre-Usyk roll at the dice at Agit Kabayel and getting a WBC title around his waist? I think absolutely it would be worth it for Tyson Fury. And a fight in Germany again with Tyson Fury. I know,
it's cost,
with that crowd, imagine that crowd getting behind Kabayel in the way they did. Fury having the history he had of going to Germany and getting a big win. Combine that, and I think you've got a magnificent fight, one of the best fights we can make. But I don't think it will happen because the WBC have protected Usyk in the way they have.
Yeah. It would be an interesting fight to watch, especially with all the history that Fury has going over to Germany as well. But I don't know if I personally think more now from what we're seeing, I see Tyson Fury and Fabio Wardley fighting each other. Because similar to what I said a few weeks ago, or it might have been late last year, where I thought maybe Anthony Joshua and Fabio Wardley would fight each other, because I thought they're going to try and put a world title on Joshua to make that Fury fight bigger. But I think it could flip the other way now, where they give Joshua a bit more time, obviously, considering all he's going through to sort out that, and if he is going to get back in the ring, that can be done at a later date. But you give Fury the fight against Fabio Wardley. If he beats Wardley, which you probably would expect in terms of technically he's probably better than Wardley, but again, there's still a risk there with Wardley that if he lands the shot, and we've seen with Fury, even though he's got a great chin and good powers of recovery, is susceptible to taking a shot and being dropped. So it could go either way, really, but you probably would go into it with Tyson Fury as the favourite. If he could win that, gives him a world title again, and then elevates that fight with Joshua at the end of the year. But Kabayel, it's difficult to see, like, if it's not Usyk and it's not Tyson Fury, I don't know who you'd consider next in line to be.
Probably Joseph Parker.
Could look at Joseph Parker, Daniel Dubois, maybe.
Yeah, I think there's big fights there, and particularly now that Queensberry, I think, have done that litmus test of, okay, does he sell in Germany? Yes, absolutely. And again, I know going back to it, they talked, I think it was George Warren talked about on the stream about how they wanted a bigger venue, but they had to work with the Bundesliga and timings and stuff, and so they had the arena they had. There's no reason why, if you got a big fight like a Parker, like a Dubois in the summer, that, you know, there's certainly in that neck of the woods, you've got Mönchengladbach, you've got Dortmund, you've got big stadiums. You could put on huge fight nights in there, which I think would be really great to see.
I would not be against seeing Kabayel and Dubois out in Germany in the summer.
Yeah, I think it'd be great. And then, you know, you look at that, and 15,000, I think, sold for Damian Kynba, who, with all due respect, no one really knew who he was going into this fight. It wasn't the most stacked undercard in the world. There's absolutely no reason why they couldn't sell a reasonably sized stadium in Germany off the back of that performance. But we'll have to wait and see on that one. Elsewhere on the card, we'll get on to Javier Herrera, who I think is obviously, you know, interesting to talk about. But first and foremost, Granit Xhaka, Peter Milas was an interesting fight. It was two, I think, quite well matched heavyweights. It wasn't the highest level fight. I think Xhaka was the better boxer, but didn't have the tank. Milas was a little bit better conditioned. But that stoppage is causing a huge amount of controversy, and rightfully so. I don't know off the top of my head, and I'm not one to kind of try and pick out judges and say you in particular or refs, but it was shocking. Yeah. I mean, even when a heavyweight is looking at his opponent and saying to the ref, "Mate, he's done, he's cooked, he's over, cool it," no, and then just delivers a 1-2 to prove his point to the referee, and causes such unnecessary damage to a fighter. I just don't know what was going through his head, let alone letting him get back up off the second knockdown, and then even beyond that, getting him through that flurry, and then just mental. He
must have had a bet on him to win or something, because I felt sorry for it. I didn't catch it live, but I went back and watched afterwards. It felt like about 3 or 4 times he could have stopped it before it got to the point where he was completely on his back, flattened. But yeah, like you said, when he was literally stood there in front of him just going, he's not even moving, like.
And he still had the audacity to count him after that knockdown.
Yeah, that was what tipped me over the edge. He'd already been knocked down about 3 times, then took a flush shot to the chin after both his hands were down by his side, clearly showing a complete lack of defence. Gets dropped again, and then the ref goes, "I'm going to give you another chance to get up and try and keep on fighting." But
I think particularly now, looking at it after the event, when you contrast it to the Kynba stoppage, which was very much, okay, I'm pretty damn confident this is going to happen now. He probably should have let it go a kind of another flurry to kind of confirm it, but I think he very much did save a fighter from what could have been a pretty violent knockout. And from that point of view, I'm happy with that. But when you contrast that to what happened, and obviously in both circumstances, either side of it, it's a German fighter in Germany. I always try and give people the benefit of the doubt, but if nothing else, the referees had an absolute stinker.
Yeah. To be fair, if he had somehow managed to get through that and come back and win the fight or even get to the end, that would have probably been the toughest chin in boxing, because he was completely out of it. Yeah, should have been stopped way sooner, but I suppose it's a learning curve for that referee to. But probably the next time he gets in the ring now, he's going to be too quick to jump in, and you're going to have some fighter that's completely fine.
First jab of the fight. Woo. Almost certainly. But I think Milas now looks like an interesting prospect as a IBF international. We know what the IBF are like with calling mandatories. Nobody, I think, Frank Sanchez and Richard Torres Jr. at the moment are negotiating over the IBF. So I think from that point of view, any fighter in and around the heavyweight scene is going to be looking at a Milas, Sanchez or Torres as a journey to a world title. That's a pretty favourable route. Not to say either men or any of those fighters are bad by any means, but it's probably the most favourable route to a world title. So there'll be plenty of people paying attention to that. And then Javier Herrera, who comes now with the WBC interim title after winning his fight. Not as convincingly as maybe you would have hoped it would be. And certainly does not have an easy route to a world title in terms of the winner of Shakur Stevenson, Teofimo Lopez. That's just about as hard as it gets. But yeah, like you say, that stoppage was
referee mental. Got dropped and everything. But the one good thing, I suppose, is he showed the ability to come back from that early knockdown and get the job done. And there's no doubt that that relentless sort of pressure and the flurry of punches and the heavy hands he's got could possibly get him out of trouble in the future. But you obviously don't want it to get to that point. But when you're looking now at the possibility of having Shakur Stevenson or Teofimo Lopez as your next opponent, if you're going to go for a world title, the worry is with me that he shows again those sort of defensive frailties of getting hit too much maybe and being a bit too open. But I think that does as well come with the fact that he seems to have no respect for the opponents in front of him and the power maybe that they bring. I think he backs himself more to land that shot than take too many. But yeah, maybe once he gets in a fight like that, and fights like this will teach him, and every you're going to have to be better defensively, especially when you jump up those levels, because the better the fighters, they're going to punish you and make you look stupid if you don't. But yeah, he's put himself one step closer to a big fight now, and I'm sure it's one he's going to be confident in and looking forward to. But I think he's going to have to get a lot sharper, especially against someone like Shakur Stevenson, who could pick your head off quite easily. I
think the other thing is we've got, obviously, I'm pretty sure Shakur Stevenson, I might be wrong in this, but I'm pretty sure Shakur Stevenson's coming up to super lightweight for the Teofimo fight, which would suggest a possibility, maybe not a probability, but a possibility that he decides to stay at that weight, leaving the WBC title into Javier Herrera's hands, and then setting up that fight that we mentioned, which would be mega against Andy Cruz, which, two Cubans, very contrasting fighters, a 23-year-old lad in Herrera, very young, Andy Cruz a lot more experienced in the amateurs, more recently turned over to the pros, would be really exciting. But I don't see him causing any of the current champions any real problems. But he is, like I said, he is only 23. And I did also just have a look just then to check whether it was the referee that got dropped that was refereeing the Charla fight, just to, give him some benefit of the doubt if he was a bit dazed, but it wasn't, unfortunately.
No, it wasn't.
But that would add up if he'd just been chinned. Maybe he was a little bit out of it. But
it was just a chaos night for stoppages, I think.
But I think as well, and there's something always to be said for atmosphere in arenas creating things, and I mean that in the sense of not that interesting, not that big punches feel like big punches when the crowd is behind it. And that Kabayel fight, every moment felt like just seconds away from a stoppage if you were just listening to it in the crowd. And so obviously if the fights aren't going to happen outside of Saudi Arabia, make them in Saudi Arabia. But if you can make a fight in somewhere like that, whether it's the UK, whether it's America, whether it's Germany, wherever it may be, if you can make a fight outside of Saudi Arabia, please do it, because it's so much better.
Oh yeah, boxing is way better when it's got the atmosphere to go with it. Like when you look at some of the fights last year, like the contrast you could find behind some of the fights, like Adam Smith and Josh Boaty, I think, was out in Saudi Arabia, wasn't it? Didn't have much of an atmosphere. Imagine that was a headliner in the UK and the
in
atmosphere.
Like Echo Arena or something in Liverpool, that would have been unbelievable.
That. And then in contrast, imagine Conor Ben Eubank, the first fight. Imagine that was in Saudi and not in Tottenham's ground. Like, the atmosphere does really make a fight sometimes, and especially big fights like that. Like you said, even just those punches that don't land clean or come close, like it just gets people up off the edge of their seat, and that's what you want to see in sport and boxing. We won the atmosphere, but the German atmosphere was very good, so I'm sure Queensbury are going to plan another trip over there and get Kabayel back headlining at some point.
As we look to wrap up, a couple things. Kabayel, if you could pick one fight from next, which one would it be?
If I had to go now based off how the heavyweight division is looking at the moment, I'd go Daniel Dubois in Germany in the summer.
I think I wouldn't go quite that far. I think I would look at Filip Hrgović, perhaps, or if not, and I don't think this happens by any stretch, but I think Lawrence Okolie would be an interesting fight style-wise. Obviously, you and Harry don't particularly rate Lawrence Okolie, and he's not great to watch, but he's an awkward bugger, and he is big. I think that would be interesting.
I feel like they're setting up for a Toma and Okolie, I do.
I think so, yeah. I do think so.
That's what we'll get back. And I would not be shocked if they do Moses Toma and Lawrence Okolie on the undercard of Fury Joshua.
Yeah.
As especially if those two were to retire after that. If they stick that as the co-main and just sort of be, this is your next in line. But then, depends. But if it's got the Riyadh season back in, I suppose they can throw it.
There's bound to be enough heavyweight fights on there as well if it does. So we'll have to wait and see that one. And then Dalton Smith, next fight, if you could pick. Would you go straight into the Azim fight, or would you stick one in the middle?
I think with a sort of business head on, promoter's head on, I'd wait until you've maybe put them both at world title level. So I'd probably go get the Puello fight in Sheffield as a defence. It's going to be tough, and there's a possibility he could lose that belt, but hopefully he can keep the momentum going, especially with the backing of a home crowd as well. Get that over the line, and then you've got a massive fight with Adam Azim at the end of the year.
Yeah, I think I agree on the Puello fight, but it can be any of those kind of fighters around that level. And I think there's quite a lot of fighters in that division. When you look at it, you've obviously got Teofimo Lopez at the top, Richardson Hitchens, Keyshawn Davis, Barboza Jr., and then sort of below that, you've got, Frank Martin, Lamont Roach. You know, there's fighters around there that are tests, Pitbull Cruz. You know, there's plenty of tests at that level for him.
Is Richardson Hitchens signed with Matchroom?
He
was with it for a bit.
Believe not. I think there was a bit of a fallout there.
He's gone off on his own only.
I mean, unless Dalton Smith wants to make a career out of going to New York and upsetting people, you know, go to New York, upset Richardson Hitchens in his hometown, go to New York, upset Shakur Stevenson in his hometown, not New York, New Jersey, it's close enough. Could be quite fun. There's a little kind of side quest.
Just do a tour around America. Beating all the best.
No, just keep going to New York. But there's plenty of good fights there. Let us know down below in both Spotify or YouTube. If you guys have a preference for either of those fights, or if you, I was going to say if you disagree with anything you say, we don't really need to preface that. You will always disagree with what we say, or certainly let us know if you do. But let us know if you agree or anything else. Otherwise, we'll be back next week for some more content. There's nothing really of interest this weekend, so we're going to give you guys a weekend off, and soon enough we'll be back in with all the good action every twice a week. Thank you all for tuning in, and we'll see you all next week.
Punches chance. Punches Chance podcast.